So, welcome everybody to this week's PDOCS live stream episode. Thanks for watching, whether you're live on the call, a couple people here, whether you're watching the replay in the group today or on YouTube. We're happy to have you. And, the main purpose behind these, as I always lead off saying, is to deliver value, new expert speakers, which today I'm about to introduce ours, but more importantly, giving you things that you can go implement and execute into your business and take away, whether it's one thing that you just take away or whether there's a few. If we're doing these and dropping value and lessons and nobody is implementing and executing, I feel like it's for nothing. So that's kind of my goal, is to give you stuff that you can chunk down and take away one or two things and go implement them. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce this week's guest, Manny Wolfe. Manny and I have known each other through social media and kind of been in groups and seen each other's content for years, but we've never actually collaborated and had a session like this where we can both drop value, more so around Manny's expertise, which, as I mentioned, guys, is around group growth and monetization. We're going to focus more on Facebook groups, but I know a lot of this will apply to school communities, to Discord, and the other groups 100%. You may have.
Yeah, 100%.
Right. So, Manny, why don't we start off with a little of your background and what you're going to base some of today's lessons off, some of the results and clients you've implemented this for.
Yeah, absolutely. Lately in my group and in my emails, I've started calling myself your cranky marketing uncle. And the reason for that is I'm just sick to death of all the bullshit. I am just so over it. I studied marketing in college, marketing, sales, and advertising. And you wouldn't know it by watching the people on social media, but it was once a respected profession,
That's
I kid a little bit, but like, good God, man, the whole flattening out the hierarchy, like, so that's what Facebook did originally, right? It was like, and LinkedIn, suddenly you could get a hold of, well, I remember when I first got on LinkedIn, this guy who was like an upper C-suite executive at Verizon just invited me to a call, and it was no sales pitch or anything. It's just this guy who is a polished top of the top professional. That's how it was for a while. Yep. It was like anyone could get a hold of anyone. Now, obviously, hierarchies are well, maybe it's not obvious. They restructure themselves. You can't get rid of them where there are living things. I say all that to say that when they were flattened, everybody rushed into the space. And it's a way of talking about how there's very little to, if any, barrier to entry. You can just show up and say whatever the hell you want, and depending on how good of how smooth of a talker you are, you can dupe people. And so that was the environment in which I came into social media. Just really quickly, because I want to get into the good stuff. I was, I never know where to start with this, so I'll just go all the way back to being born. I was very literally born into a cult in 1967 in San Francisco in the height of the hippie movement. And I only say that to say this. If you're familiar with like an earthquake needle, the idea of an earthquake needle, a seismograph needle, any input in it and it flinches, right? That's me with BS, if I do say so myself. And so I came into this space, and because I'm also, I've got this childlike kind of part of me, I fell for it, man. I fell for all the glittery lies and the misdirection and downloading and the webinars and the promises and everything. And at a certain point, I got really pissed at myself that I fell for it, because I should have known better, And I've sort of become evangelical since then. And that's, I think, what people probably know me for, is my cranky evangelical calling out the crap. And weirdly, that actually turned into a really effective personal brand for me. It's like, you can't get away from the machine, you know what I mean? And so when I came in, I was just leaving from construction. I was a house painter and a painting contractor for probably 15 years, maybe 20. Yeah. My body started kind of breaking down a little bit, and I was like, I got to do something else. I happened to meet the woman who is now my wife, and long story short, I was trying to show off to her with my horrible horror stories, and she just said to me point blank, "You have to write a book." She was not impressed with my stories. She didn't, my drag didn't impress her at all. She's like, "You have to write this down. You've got to write this down." And didn't know what to say. So I said, okay, all right. I went home that night and I started writing my life story. Finished it, got it, had no idea what to do with it. I mean, I'm an OG. I thought honestly that you had to then send 100 copies out to publishers and get 99 rejections, just like in the rom-coms from the 80s. Didn't know anything about building an audience. Didn't know anything about even like that was a thing. So I get on a call with this guy from Penguin Publishing, another weird hierarchy leveling fluke, right? I don't think you could probably do that today. I don't imagine that you could get access to somebody who like is calling shots on like Clive Kessler books or whatever the big authors are now. But I did. It was freaky, and I did it. He gave me 15 minutes, and it was, I guess, literally life changing. He said, "You have to build an audience." And I said, "What does that mean?" He told me. I said, "How do I do it?" He said, "A podcast." I said, "Start a podcast, build an audience. When you've got some followers, come back." I never went back because I just got too absorbed in all this. But so I started a podcast, and weirdly, like I thought I was going to do this thing where it was like be a men's coach and use all the experiences from my incredibly bizarre childhood. Just we could talk about that too, but other than entertainment, there's not a lot of value to it, you know. And so I started the podcast, and I started the building the audience, and I started all that stuff, and I just found that like for the most part, I really enjoyed the really bizarre kind of vehicle of social media. Like it's you, but it's only you in little controlled posts, right? And little controlled videos. And I don't know what it was about that appealed to me. And so I was thinking once I launched this podcast, it's game over. Every other men's coach, pack it up because I'm the only one, you know. And so I launched the podcast.
We've all thought
Yeah,
that.
yeah. Well, one of these things that I'm going to talk about a little bit in this chat, Raymond, is how many of us feel like the act of hanging our shingle, and this is serious. This is serious. Um, we make a very honest but naive assumption that the act of hanging our shingle will create a path to our door from people. Right? It's this sort of just thing. I don't know where the idea comes from, but we all tend to think it. It's like, well, I'm so good, and I've gone through the process of deciding to risk, everything and hang my shingle and say I'm a this coach, I'm a that service provider. What else could it possibly require? Marketing. And for almost all of us, marketing is about as far from our expertise as anything could be, right? You don't become a theta healing coach just to then go master marketing. You don't become like Sharon. What do you coach on? What's your expertise?
Oh, I help people who are entrepreneurs down their offer. Like their offers are like usually huge, and I
Yeah.
shortcut offers so they can get a quick win for their clients. Build trust in there so they can like skyrocket to their higher ticket offer.
All right, I love it. Now, you may be an exception to this rule, but when you first started, did you think that marketing was going to be a big part of it? Or did you think it was going to be a lot easier and you could just focus on your area of expertise?
Yeah, I just thought I would just focus on, and people just run to me. Like,
why wouldn't they? Look how awesome you are. Yeah, totally. No, I get it. And I mean, I beat my head against the wall with this for so long. But what happened was as soon as I launched my podcast, somebody came into my DMs and said, "Can you teach me how to sound like you?" I couldn't imagine anything further from what my intent was, right? It's literally first money I made online was a guy in Georgia who recognized that he didn't have a voice for his podcast and has kind of got this lazy drawl, that cool like Southern drawl, but he also was real tired sounding in there. Anyway, long story short, I didn't know about PayPal yet. I didn't know about Stripe yet. I had this guy drive to the Wells Fargo in his neighborhood in Georgia,
Money order.
deposit $397 into my Wells Fargo account in California. And I remember showing my wife and like, look at that. That's almost $100 an hour because he hired me for 4 hours. It just blew me away. And, so I got a taste of it and I was like, oh, well, now a little background. Prior to coming online, I had studied public speaking, acting, and singing. And so I kind of like just organized it in my head real quick and said, yeah, I actually can teach you how to sound better on the mic. That led to vocal tonality and charisma training, which public speakers all became very interested in that. And I'd already had some experience in public speaking and acting and performing. And I quickly just created this course where it's like body language, vocal tonality, and story. And this is how you become a great presenter. That it did okay. It did okay, but still, I was like, I didn't know anything about marketing. Right? The people who got a hold of my content and went through my trainings, it blew their minds, but it still had this idea like, well, why aren't people beating a path to my door? At a certain point, I feel like I just fell for one too many of the like fluffy download. I don't remember what it was, but I just started to see through it all. I started to see through all the crap. And so from there, I started getting frustrated and just, I'm going to figure out this lead generation thing. Right. And I never took it to the level of data and technology like you guys have. But so I went the sort of human connection route. And I started to figure it out. Yeah. And even my whole approach was more about like, what is it I can say, do, and how can I show up that will make people, be attracted to me and my message. Yeah. And so where were we? We were at the public speaking and everything. Yeah. I started just documenting my journey. I'm sure we've all heard that, right? Document the journey. And I didn't think of it like, oh, I'll document my journey. I'm just sort of expressive, and so for me, documenting my journey was like doing live streams where I was calling bullshit on a lot of stuff. If you guys remember, probably about 7 years ago, live streams were super hot. Like Facebook really liked them, people liked them. They really got traction, and I used them. What I didn't realize was people started following along with the stuff that I was sharing, which really, honestly, it was like venting. It was really like, let's just get it out of our head and put it in writing. But people started kind of identifying me as an organic marketing guy. And so I was like, well, it's interesting work. And they see, they're saying I do it anyway. And I just kind of went down that rabbit hole. At a certain point, all the stuff I had studied in college kind of started resurfacing. It's like, oh yeah, wait a minute, hold on. This is like, I went to school for marketing and advertising, not exclusively, but that's what I was the most interested in back before this KLT thing was a thing.
Yeah.
It was back when KLT was still AIDA, right? And so for anybody watching this, KLT is like a cheap, modern bastardization of the principle of attention, interest, desire, and action, AIDA. KLT is know, like, and trust. It's quicker. It's maybe possibly sexier. It doesn't have the depth to it that AIDA does, but maybe more on that later if it makes sense. I sort of started to become known as an organic marketing expert, and I tested, God, I don't even know, 10, 15, 20 of my own groups before I finally figured things out.
Yep.
I really did do a lot of testing. And for anybody watching this is just a side thought. When I hear people talk about, oh, I did all this testing, to me, I always have this idea that it's this like kind of cool romantic thing, like one of those in movies they'll have the montage scene, right? I always, for some reason in my head, I thought it was like that. It's not like that. It's slow and awful and tedious. It's like testing. And if you don't have a good ability to take what you're seeing and learning and interpret it, no amount of testing is going to matter for you. I know you can relate to that. But anyway, little by little, I started to cobble together skills and a reputation. And I just leaned into it. I just leaned into it. And so at a certain point, I was still kind of loosely focused on public speakers. And I had created this product service. It's kind of a little bit unclear. It was a hybrid of both, where we were finding and applying to 50 speaking gigs a month for speakers for a fee. And it was a really cool thing, man. It was like scalable. And then COVID hit and public speaking went away. And you saw all these public speakers talking about switching to virtual events and sharpening your skills. I didn't have time for any of that. You know what I mean? I was like, I got to figure something out here. And so that's when it was like, well, maybe I just focus on just teaching marketing, lead gen, messaging, those things. And so that's kind of where I've been, where my focus has been for the last, let's call it, I guess, since 2020.
4 years plus.
Yeah, 5 years, 4 or 5 years. Anyway, like I said, in that time, I had run my own groups with varying degrees of success, never understanding what I am about to share with you guys. And that is less is more. Less is so much more when it comes to groups. There's a whole dimension of psychology and human behavior that the old build a group as a personal brand tool didn't take into account, right? If you want to build a personal brand, that's fine. And in fact, I suggest it. But when it comes to how to strategize approaching a group, for some reason, we feel like groups are even harder than posting on our profile, right? Can you relate to that? Here's the thing.
I think most can. I think most can. I'm kind of fortunate where it was. I kind of had the same amount of ease regardless. But I know what you're saying, and I've heard that from clients.
Yeah, and it's weird because if you could remove the ego barriers, it's far easier. It's far easier. But there's just this very hard to move sort of perception filter, you know. And so I'm always telling clients, oh, you couldn't manage to shoot a video today? Well, hey, why don't you try 10 hours on a ladder in the sun painting a house and then get back to me and let's talk about what hard work really is. You know, because it's not hard work. It's not hard work, but there's this weird ego link in the chain that because we're so scared of being rejected, and we're so like all of this stuff comes up with posting that doesn't come up with showing up at the office or painting a house or whatever it is. And so like a big thing that led me to this done for you, which is almost exclusively what I do now, was all right, I can see that entrepreneurs won't do these things, but they need these results. They want them and they need them. I mean, I'm gonna brag a little bit, and for some people watching this, it's gonna be like that's nothing. Other people, it's gonna be like that's amazing. I have worked directly with somewhere in the neighborhood of 2,000 people at this point. And, nice. It is what it is, right? It's more than some, less than others. But here's the thing that's really important as we get into the tactical stuff. Even for polling the entire United States, 2,000 people is considered a statistically significant sample size. And I think if Adam were here, he'd be proud of me for saying that.
I would agree with that. I would agree with that. I'm probably somewhere around 4,000, but 2,000 is a great sample size.
Well, too. when they talk about polling, you know, and they'll show the little number of sample pollers tested, it's always about 1,800.
Sometimes even less.
And sometimes even less. And then I clawed my way through statistics in college, which was ugly. But I did learn there too. So the point is, I have enough experience that my observations are valid from a statistical perspective. That's the only thing I care about here, right? In what we're talking about. And so when I say that these online entrepreneurs, coaches, experts, course creators, they just don't want to do the marketing. But here's where it gets slippery. There's so much pressure and so much like you can't pretend you're not good at marketing. You know what I mean? Or you can't admit you're not good at marketing in the social media.
You can't admit.
You can't admit, not pretend, but admit. And so there's this massive cognitive dissonance. There's this massive sort of like struggle between the reality of your situation and what you think you need to be saying and doing. And so what happens is entrepreneurs and coaches and experts and service providers, instead of coming right out and saying, God, I hate marketing. I hate it. They couch it in all this. Oh, I didn't have time to shoot a 1-minute video. You know, you did. You absolutely did. You could have done it on the way to the car.
You didn't make it a priority.
Right, exactly. And so then you got to get into why didn't you make it a priority? Because my ego. Like, I don't want to risk rejection. And so even when I was working with speakers and just vocal tonality and everything, I was always like, how can I craft offers that serve at the highest level I'm capable of serving at, and done for you ultimately was the answer. It was ultimately the answer. So I started cobbling together processes and systems and again, trying to look at data the best I could and reduce it down to how much of this can I take off their plate.
And how much can you simplify it, right?
Well, that's the thing, Raymond. It's pretty simple when you remove the pressure, when you remove the sort of self-applied, and it's very egoic. I'm going to probably say this word a lot on this call, but it isn't actually hard the way climbing a ladder is hard or lifting a heavy weight is hard, or, you know what I mean? It's not hard in those ways. It's hard because there are so many people shouting so many conflicting messages at you, and you don't know who to trust. And when we don't know who to trust, we get back to it reverts us back to this like beginner baby steps way of doing things, right? Nobody wants to get out in the unknown, but everybody wants to talk about how everything you want is out in the unknown.
Ironic,
can you guys relate to that? Yeah, totally. And so for me, it's like, look, let me handle it for you. And then you can actually look like you're smarter. We're outsourcing it, and that'll feed your ego. And I don't mean to be dismissive about that, because the way that our ego messes with us is very real and is very important.
I would agree.
Yeah. And so about 2 years ago, 18 months ago, I don't remember exactly when, I was just sitting there on my couch and I was like, oh, and I posted this post, idea, all in caps, : I'll build, run, and monetize a Facebook group for you, and we split the profits. It just blew up.
I've seen you do that a dozen times. I mean,
if not 3 dozen.
Yeah.
And each time that exact same post brings in new business.
I'm sure.
And so that's when I knew I had something, right? That's when I knew that the idea matched the intent.
Yep.
Because my goal really is to take as much of it off your plate as possible. That really is. I just don't think, especially like the service providers who have a lot of us, like, we coach on the thing that we struggled with a few years earlier, right? That's very common. Yeah. You get through it, you figure some stuff out. And I believe it's like a truly altruistic act to say, I'd like to help other people with this now. And so, then how do I do that? Well, you got to learn marketing. And that's where most people just stop dead. They start posting, but the posts have no strategy. They start trying to do, this is a big one. Too early in the game, you start to try to collaborate.
I agree.
Right? And what happens? Well, it's two people who don't have enough resources or cachet yet, hoping the other one will lift them up, rather than a collaboration based on, I've got this shit over here dialed, and you've got that shit over there dialed.
If we combine it.
That's exactly. And so collaborations are wonderful if and when you've got
the right foundations, really.
Well, complementary skill sets, I was going to say, but yeah, the right foundations, complementary skill sets. That's another thing. We automatically tend to filter for people who are like us. And so you wind up being like a copywriter trying to collaborate with another copywriter. There's very little sort of like potential there, right?
Yeah.
So for someone like me, if a really, really savvy ops-minded person, like a COO-minded person, came along and pitched me on a partnership, that'd be a hard one to say no to. Because my thing is the big picture. My thing is the communication. It's the writing. And the ops stuff is like, I have to force myself to do that stuff. And I know I do it at a level, for instance, not as high as you guys, right? And I'm okay with that. But yeah, so that's like, all that is setting the stage for, I think, if you think it's the right time, let's just get into what I've learned.
Yeah. I just want to add one thing, like something I always say to my students and clients, and Sharon, you probably heard this before over the years come out of my mouth. Like you said, it's not hard, right? You didn't have the time to shoot a 1-minute video. Mm-hmm. Well, I get a lot of clients or students that'll come back to me after going through modules and training and say, hey, Ray, I had no sales this week. And my first question is, well, Sharon, how many offers did you make? Oh, I
Right.
didn't make any, but you expected sales. I mean,
Right.
so like you got to ask yourself that question. Did I actually speak with people and make offers? If
Right.
not, you're never going
Right.
to, I mean, you can't expect to have sales if you're not having conversations and making offers. So that's just one little internal question at the end of every day. Ask yourself, how many offers did I make today? Did I make any offers today?
Did I?
And be honest with yourself, because if the answer is no, don't expect sales, right? But so I just wanted to add that to like the hard part. I think that's another aspect that people need to be self-accountable for.
100%, 100%. So I've got four levels of service right now, from a membership, which is organic marketing taught by me live weekly. I don't really push it as much as I probably should, because it does serve a market very, very potently. And that goes into everything you need to know to build a personal brand on social media, to get clients without spending money on ads, all of the pieces.
Yep.
Your core brand story, how to make offers, how to make engagement posts, how to make hand raiser posts, sales psychology. Like, it's deep. It's
well,
deep.
The good thing about you, I just want to add really quickly, and something that has gravitated and why I was happy to see you comment, and we did this this live stream today, is I like how your personality is embedded into your content, whether that be humor, whether that be a little bit of an edge, whether that be calling out the BS, because that's what helps you stand out, that authenticity, and really putting your personality into your content, which a lot of people are hesitant to do. They almost shove their personality, and their content is a different part of them.
Yeah. And, you know, I'm not sure if they do it by choice or by just sort of like, again, ego protection. It's
or they
scary.
follow the wrong information.
Or they follow the wrong information. You know? Yeah. One of the things where if you could chart it, you'd see my progress go from this to this was finally taking the kid gloves off and speaking from the heart.
Likewise,
you know?
I got to say the same here.
Yeah, right. Totally. I am hyper verbal. I'm hyper lexical. And why on earth would I try to hide that in an environment that favors, that rewards good communication? But I did for years. You know, I tried to like pick my lane out of the middle. I'm like, fuck that.
They swerve all over the road.
Yeah. At a certain point, it's like, I remember the moment, the inflection point. I really do. I was doing a live stream and I was calling out. I had one person in mind specifically who I won't name, but generally speaking, I was calling out this like wave of people who had taken law of attraction stuff and rebranded it.
Yeah.
And we're trying to pretend like they were these like mystics and sages and they could see into the future. And I'm like, the fuck you can.
That's a BS lane. That's such a BS lane.
It's such a BS lane. You do find very, very high level personal brands in that lane, though, because you have to have to sell that shit.
Yeah. So let's dive into what you wanted to cover, and what I wanted you to cover, really, because when we spoke on the phone setting this up, you told me about, I think you had the data from approximately 27 groups you were talking about, and you were talking about like four main aspects, and that people overcomplicate. I'd love to dive into a bit of that if you could.
Let's get into it. Yeah, because I will talk about that other stuff until you rein me in.
Yeah, you and me both. But I got a hard stop at the 45 after the hour here.
Running a group as a sales tool for your thing, whatever your thing is, this works equally well for low price memberships, mid ticket, high ticket. My personal favorite is to start with a membership and develop a cushion of revenue, because people will naturally ascend. But here's the thing. In a nutshell, you really only need to check 3 boxes in your content. 3. That's it. And not most, but a lot of your content can check 1, 2, or all 3 boxes. And so the 3 boxes are curiosity, authority, and reciprocity. Now, if you stop this thing anywhere, write that shit down. Curiosity, authority, and reciprocity. If you've studied this stuff at all, if you're familiar with Cialdini, you know that reciprocity is the king of the ethical principles of persuasion. There are other ones. I don't care for FOMO. I don't care for false scarcity. I mean, there's a real scarcity built into what I do now because it's done for you. But prior to that, I had tried to like wedge scarcity into things here and there, and it always feels weird.
Because it's fake, generally.
Because it's fake. Yeah, exactly. So let's talk a little bit about what constitutes, like, what could you do if you came to me and said, here's $10,000, give me the simplest guaranteed content strategy. I'd say lead magnets for reciprocity and authority and curiosity, sharing strategically, sharing the ways that your life story intersects with your work. And since this is the teaching part, I'll talk about that in depth a little bit, because I know that's the kind of thing that once you go away from the call, it kind of dissipate and be hard to, like, what the hell did he mean by that?
Yeah, hard to pinpoint.
Yeah. And so to be really clear, it's not enough to tell us that you're the dopest funnel builder, right? Because everybody who builds funnels says they're the dopest funnel builder.
You don't say.
Yeah. Yeah. But here's what's going to, all right, it's time for a few of my world famous line drawings, because these really do help illustrate these.
I've seen your great artwork in the past.
Here, my friends, is a fence. Bear with me, guys. This is worth it.
We can bear.
And okay, sloppy, I know, but that's okay. Imagine all the other lines are there too. No matter what service you provide online, there are 50, 100, 300 other people providing a similar service in the mind of your prospect, right? And that's the thing to understand. This is one of the things that having a background in performance really helped me with. You've got to be able to toggle from your POV to the audience POV. You have to do that.
So important.
If you can't do that, I doubt you'll ever get anywhere, because you're just thinking, again, egoically. Your mind is not asking,
like my stuff, but
right. Your mind is not asking, what does the audience want to see? And so the reason that you want to create authority is so that you can move yourself out of being seen as just another fence post, just another mindset coach, just another transformational coach, just another lead gen coach. Right. And because when we see you like that and we don't know who you are, we compare on prices and features. It's natural, right? But when you start kind of showing us your own unique awesomeness, what happens is this. In a very simple way, you stand out. It's that easy. But if you cannot share sort of an insight into who you are, you will forever be relegated to just another fence post that looks like all the other fence posts. In my backyard, we stained our whole fence black. And it's a perfect analogy here, because even less than normal can you tell one fence slab from another, right?
Yeah, because they're so dark, yeah.
But then there's one that the dogs always go to when they want to yell at the dogs on the other side of the fence. And so this one has started to stand out. Anyway, when you only share your expertise, we kind of go, okay, we get it. You're smart, right? When you share your expertise mixed with your experience, how did you win that expertise? What did you go through? A very predictable and very reliable process starts happening. We can't help in our minds but start to sort of see you as unique. And only when we see you as unique will we stop shopping you on features and prices. And you cannot compete on price, because there's always going to be some narcissistic, sociopathic 25-year-old who lives in his mom's basement who will undercut you. Always. I think we could agree on that, right?
Not only can you not, you don't want to be
you don't want to in any way.
Yeah. Why would you want to be the bottom of the barrel pricing? Because you're never going to be seen as a true expert. You're going to be seen as the cheap guy because I can't afford Dean Graziosi or Tony Robbins, whatever.
Right. Exactly.
Name out there.
Exactly. Now, could you imagine somebody retaining your services and in the back of their mind, they're like, well, I couldn't afford Dean Graziosi, so I bought you?
Yeah. Who wants to be that guy?
Not me.
Not me.
So let's talk about specifically the lead magnets part of this content strategy. It is the heavy lifter. It is the power engine. And here's why.
A lot of people make shit lead magnets. Sorry, I just had to say that before you get into it, Manny.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're right. So let's talk a little bit about what a lead magnet should contain. If we were to say that this image here was not a fence anymore, but a representation of all of your skill, right? And there's little individual pieces of your skill set. A lead magnet should be one of these at a time. Just one idea, one valuable thing, and don't hold back. You go to any of my lead magnets, you can make money off of them. Most people won't. And that's just the whole, like, you don't pay attention to what you don't pay for thing, but you could. And if you were weird enough to like comb through 10 years of my content, you would see that over and over and over again. I've said, if you take this and you apply it, you'll never need to hire me. And then after a certain point, I started saying, but you won't.
We know human nature.
Yeah, because they won't. And so a lead magnet will get you in conversations like that with the people that are ready to buy. It will also nurture the people that aren't ready yet. It also reinforces your personal brand. It also demonstrates your expertise. It also, and maybe this is the most important other than the buyers, you get instant, real-time, unsolicited market feedback. And I cannot emphasize this one enough. If you put a question into your group or into any place where you can ask questions, you're going to get biased feedback. I'll quickly go back to the statistics class that I clawed my way through. One of the things the professor taught us was any kind of like, I don't know if you guys remember ratemyprofessor.com.
Doesn't ring a bell with me.
It was this website that was originally meant to be, is this professor any good? And you could go on and you could choose your classes based on the feedback of peers. It turned into this, oh, this professor is so cute, this professor is so sexy. But I know, it's like, that's humans, right? But I got into statistics class, and this cute, giggly, dumb girl, first thing she says is, you didn't score very high on ratemyprofessor.com. And she thinks she's being funny. And he just takes his glasses off and he said, look, I guess it's time for our first lesson in statistics. Statistically speaking, the 90% who are in the middle of the bell curve on any experience won't talk about it. They don't give a damn. It's only the 10% or 5% on either side. So either you really loved it or you really hated it. And as soon as you're in those categories, you're no longer objective anyway. So all the data you get from asking questions has an inherent level of inaccuracy in it. The data you get from giving somebody some free shit, like that's like easy. They took it or they didn't.
They consumed it or they didn't as well.
Yeah.
Like when I send somebody something, I'm like, hey, here's the link to the XYZ, masterclass, whatever. Hey, Manny, I would love your thoughts and feedback after you've gone through it, because I'm always trying to make my next resource better than this one. Boom.
Absolutely.
Like, just follow your link, your resource, whatever, with a simple message like that.
Simple message.
Yeah. It's going to help you hold them accountable to watching it or consuming it, as well as getting that feedback. So just to add on.
No, you're right. You're right. In fact, I'll give you the $1,000, $10,000, $1 million transition question. Because lead magnets are meant to get into conversations, right? That's the whole point, organically. If it's paid ads, they're meant to get into your funnel. If it's organic, they're meant to get into conversations. So you go like this. Hey, would you like to get your hands on that free lead magnet we talked about? And they say yes. And you go, okay, great. Here it is in the same text bubble. Here it is, space, link, space, and follow this. I did to the T, you guys. Then, by the way, I'd love to know how you see this helping you in your business right now.
There's a good one.
There's your transition question.
Yep.
That is your $1 million question to make it not feel clunky and awkward. And so, what's going on in your business?
I hate that one. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm not actually working in my business because I'm screwing around with you. So, that's the power of lead magnets. So next you've got engagement content, and that's for curiosity. Now, let's talk a little bit about engagement content here. You have to go back to this idea of egoic, right? And this idea of your perspective versus the audience's perspective. Good engagement content can be 1 or 2 sentences. It doesn't have to be complex, but it has to be something where somebody either gets a dopamine hit from answering or an adrenaline hit from answering. So if you're like, Trump, that's a great one. right? Just for engagement and getting people to sort of start to see you as different in their minds. Because, like I did one the other day, I blank Elon Musk because he's a blank and I'm a blank. And I let everybody fill it in themselves.
I'm sure you got a good wide variety of replies there.
It went exactly like I thought it would go.
Yeah.
You know, I got people going in there with conspiracy theories about how he's this and that, and other people talking about how he's going to save the world and help us live forever. And I'm just sitting back watching. I'm just sitting back watching because I gave them what they want. And in this arena of social media, if you don't give them what they want, they'll ignore you. It's weird, right? And that's part of the reason, by the way, why so many sort of like untrustworthy people do so well here, because they understand that.
Mm.
But engagement content that allows people, the technical way of explaining it is, if it reflects your egoic label, you'll engage with it. And so your egoic label is, it's literally the way you explain yourself to yourself. How do you see yourself?
Yeah, how you view yourself, basically.
Yeah. Are you a lefty? Are you a righty? Are you a conservative? Are you a liberal? Are you short? Are you tall? Like all these things, we want to tell the world these things. And we never tire of telling the world these things. So simple, easy to get involved with engagement content. And then, like I was saying earlier, internally we call them either belief shifting posts, positioning posts, or pillar posts. They're very much really the same as each other. It's just where you share your expertise through the lens of your life experience. And I did that in the beginning of this call. I talked about being born in a cult and how it's given me this bullshit meter that is like super attenuated, right? And so the reason you like my content, I think, is because I include that stuff in there. And I include the way I really talk, right? And I like, if you knew me in person, if we were working in the office together, I'm very much the same guy. Although some people think I'm angry, and I'm not really angry.
Yeah, I don't believe that, but I could see the angle, though.
Yeah. And it doesn't mean anything to me to convince them one way or the other. You know what I mean? There's no value, utility in it for me, or I would. But it's like, fine. If you love my stuff, great. If you're tuning in just to see what an a-hole I am, that's fine too.
Either way, you're capturing attention.
Exactly. And like, that's one of the things I had to make my peace with. You have to capture attention. You have to. And Facebook in particular, we don't come here to solve problems. We come here to be distracted. Sure, you can say, oh, I come here to check on my friends and family. You come here to be distracted. You do. And there's nothing wrong with that. The whole platform is optimized for distraction.
Exactly. That's its right? Design.
Yeah. And so a good marketer knows, okay, if that's the thing I have to do, let's do that. And so authority, curiosity, reciprocity.
Yeah.
That's it. And by the way, you can do this in as little as 2 or 3 posts a week.
And sometimes again, less is more. When people flood their groups with too much content, it's like they're overproducing, and then that's going to saturate your content to be watered down and not as powerful. I like to say I like to do like an every other day post, as long as it's, again, I have a purpose behind it. And if I'm trying to do simple question-based posts to spark engagement and curiosity, I always tell people, craft a question with a specific purpose that will elicit a reply of substance. Right? Yeah. So you don't just get a one-word answer. Yes, Manny. No, Manny. Right? You want to have somebody elaborate on why they thought they did. So ideally, if you just think of that little formula to yourself before you ever click send or post, when you craft something, read it back to yourself. Does this have a specific purpose, and will it elicit a reply of substance? I think that's also a quick little important question you can ask yourself.
Totally. And the only thing I'd add to that is any engagement is better than no engagement in this, but I always am looking for meaningful engagement, which is what I think you're saying.
Yeah, definitely.
But sometimes I'll just be like, I'll let the meaningful part go, just because I understand that I'm basically just putting little pins in the minds of people that start to separate me from other people. Like, I totally am clear on that, right? Developing your true voice, whatever it is a really important thing in social media. Even if it's in ads, right? We're getting to the point where there isn't a whole lot of difference in how you should approach ads and what I call static funnels. and the way you should approach organic. The only difference is the nurture cycle is longer with paid ads, really. But the whole thing is like, even if you're using paid ads and you've got just a firecracker of a voice, it's going to nurture people faster. So
yeah, I've had people come back and tell me that, hey, you have such a good talking voice and speaking voice. I was more gravitated to keep watching your content and book a call with you. Like, I've actually heard that.
So I agree with that, but when I say voice, I mean like voice in the sense of who you are.
Yeah, no, I know that's certainly as well.
But they both matter. They both totally matter, man. It's a perception-driven medium. It's a perception-driven medium.
To reiterate, it's the prospect's perception, not your own, not your self-perception.
That's right. That's the sound of Raymond.
That's why one of the things you probably heard me talk about maybe in the past, I know you have, Sharon, one of the big parts of PDOCS and what we do is teaching our students and clients to understand the sophistication level of their prospects. Because once you know that, you can start to create, are they really entry level? Are they green, right? Have they been burned in the past? Have been through some of the BS? Have they already spent 30 grand on prior trainings and still not, like, each person I'm going to talk to a little differently.
Yeah, totally. And if you want a master class in how to write for beginners, just look at Tony Robbins and Dean Graziosi. And look at Russell Brunson too, his public facing stuff. He's way smarter than that, I think, in like, if you were like his friend sitting down talking marketing with him, but he understands, man. He's not appealing to the true savvy marketers with most of what he does.
Surface level.
Yeah. And Tony, I used to love Tony. I've lost all respect for him.
Me too.
Frankly, I can't stand anyone who stands that close to Dean Graziosi, and I'll say it publicly. The FTC agrees with me, so.
So do many of his students I've spoke with that have been through.
And me too,
programs.
Yeah.
That's what always stands up to me when I'm like, hey, what program did you go through? And what type of result did you see? I tried to get a refund. It was horrible. And then I got drawn through red tape and collection courts. And then I'm like, Jesus Christ. If a client ever asked me for a refund, which is very rare, sure. Well, show me the transaction. Let's get you squared away. Like, if it's not the right fit, you're not getting value. 100% collections court and bullshit. Like,
right. Yeah. So again, a perfect example of speaking to beginners would be Tony and Dean. They're because, I mean, they've got all the money in the world and they know how to get the best messaging and copy and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. And they're totally going after that new market. They're 100%. Totally going after the guy who just got onto Facebook yesterday in terms of a business, learning marketing or speaking or whatever.
They're basically going after people who are, as I sort of lovingly characterize them, you're still halfway through your ICA certification.
If that.
Anyway, so for content, I've covered it. Here's what we've seen now. Here's what we've seen. And I don't even know how to pull up the data. So you just have to trust me or not. Whatever. Either way is fine. When we give our clients how to make lead magnets, the training created on how to make lead magnets, and now we're starting to just make the PDFs for them.
Oh, you're even doing that done for them.
Yeah. So, I mean, we do have some AI buried in the very, very sort of core of our process, but it just gives us the rough clay. I don't quite trust it enough yet. But then I go and dial it in. Yeah. 100% of people who follow what I think are very simple instructions for how to get the lead magnets done get into conversations with great prospects. 100%. It never fails. The only time anyone could come back and complain would be, oh, I didn't actually do it. Or I did it, but I couldn't trust what you said, so I made it overcomplicated, because we love doing that, right? We love manufactured complexity. I'd like to talk about that too. I don't think we have the time. So
no, we're actually running a little over. What I was just thinking is I didn't expect this to quite go so long. I love that your backstory, you gave us a lot, which got into time for the lesson. But I'd love to schedule something to have you back on and go more in depth with this.
I'm in.
At a future week, just because of the time, because I really would have loved to go longer.
Yeah, I'm in. I totally. I tried to keep the backstory as short as possible. But
no, I think it was really important. But again, it cuts into lesson time when we're all on certain schedules and have other calls going on.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I wouldn't care to sit. I would love to sit here and keep going if I didn't have prior engagements. So that's what I'm going to do, everybody. I'm going to get with Manny after the call. We're going to schedule something where you can come back on and go more into the lesson aspect. But I think you gave some great stuff. And the biggest one I want to reiterate about the lead magnet is don't hold back. I'll give my best shit away for free. I don't care.
That's right.
Because what they're paying for, if they are paying for you, they're paying for the implementation and not the information. The information they can get out there for free, whether it's from you or somebody else. I'd rather it be from me personally. But when they're ready to pay you, it's because, like Manny said, they just won't do it. or they don't do it, or they need
Mhm.
somebody to hold their hand and hold them accountable.
Yeah.
So when somebody actually opens their wallet and pays me, they're paying more for the implementation
Yeah.
aspect. The information is going to be there regardless.
Yeah.
So yeah, you could recap and close it out on that.
The thing I would say on that, and to recap, is just really quickly, in the stock exchange and the GDP, right? It's the little lightning bolt that always goes up and to the right. The bottom peaks in trading are called support, and the top peaks will create a line that's called resistance. So if you're a good trader and you have a good model, you know where your lines are, your support and resistance lines. You know what they call everything in between that professionally on the trading
I
floor?
have no clue.
Noise.
That's a good point.
It's just called noise, man. And this is true. I'm not making this up, right?
I believe you.
And so the thing here is trust the model. If you've got a model that has been validated, it doesn't even have to necessarily work for you yet. Like this whole giving away PDFs, or not PDFs, but trainings that are high value. A lot of people resist that because you're in beginner kind of level of like, I don't know, what would they pay me for? People don't pay attention where they don't pay money. They just don't. Thomas Paine said, that which we gain too easily, we esteem too lightly. And he was right. He was right.
Got some great quotes.
The point here is everything still works, and that's actually the problem, because it creates what's called the tyranny of choice. And if you're a beginner and you're not comfortable with getting out of your comfort zone, you just get overwhelmed. As soon as something doesn't work instantly, you go try something else instead of doing what? Trusting the model, right? Trust the model.
Yeah, I'm going to reiterate. I've done a couple of trainings over the years on what I call my CIA method. It's consistency, implementation, and accountability.
Oh, there you go.
System, as long as you're doing that, am I doing my posts every day? Am I doing my content every day? Whatever it is, it's consistently implementing and holding yourself accountable. At the end of the day, if your metrics were 20 DMs and 15 friend requests and you didn't do them, your day's not done. It's that simple, right? And too many people are like, oh, I just didn't hit my number today. I'll make up for it tomorrow. It's like, no. Just look at yourself and say, I didn't hit my number. Let me get back to work.
Let me get back to work. That's right. The final thing I'd like to leave people with is the sort of wild, wild west days on social media seem to be over. Those who succeed treat this shit like a business, you guys. And I cannot stress that enough. You know, don't come to me and say I'm a happiness coach because I decided last week I was a happiness coach. Yeah. You got to validate your ideas. The laws of business, I mean, the laws of commerce and capital haven't changed ever.
They're
not really. Yeah, they're not going to, because they're deeply tied to human nature. And so anyway, I'll stop there and we'll leave a little carrot dangle for when I come back.
Yeah, that's great, man. That's great. I really appreciate you having on. I had a blast just talking with you back and forth, even though we didn't get super in depth in the lessons. But I think, you know, from about the last 20 minutes or so, the stuff you gave about content, you know, those three keys: curiosity, authority, I can never pronounce that right.
Reciprocity.
Thank you. I always get tongue tied on that. The lead magnets, the story-based content, but I like what you added to that is a hybrid of your expertise and your experience with your personality. Don't just talk about your expertise, because I'm the same way as you. If somebody's just talking about their expertise, I'm like, blah, 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 man. I heard that yesterday. Like, just like mix in a bit of your personality. Sure, do a post about your great client result, about this, but also post, you know, out at the state park, out with your daughter. Make people be able to relate to you as well as your expertise.
You have to have that dimension to it, or you're basically like you're operating with an incomplete pie chart or something. You've got to have that dimension, unless you want to constantly be shopped on price and features.
No, nobody should. Nobody watching this.
Nobody should, and you'll never win that. You'll never win that. You know,
even if you win, you don't win.
Right, exactly. Alan Sultanic said, "You can't compete with free." And I'm not going to explain that because it's at the end of the call, but I also want you guys to think about that for yourself. You can't compete with free. There's like a Zen lesson in there or something.
Totally. So yeah, that's the carrot. Actually, that's a great dangle into the next call. So I'll get with Manny. I'll let everybody know when he's going to come back on. We'll go more into this. And guys, wherever you're watching, I'll make sure I tag Manny's information, his Facebook profile, ways you can get a hold of him and follow him. And Manny, again, pleasure having you on. I'll hit you up here shortly, and we'll schedule something else.
Sounds good.
Thanks, Manny. I sent you a friend request too.
Okay, you're in. Thank you, Sharon.
Awesome. Thanks for joining, Sharon. Sorry I didn't get time for more of a Q&A here. We just went a little over.
I'll come on
We'll
next
catch you on the next one.